Football is a game of moments, some glorious, others heartbreaking. A single injury can shift the course of history, turning dynasties into what-ifs. A club on the verge of domination can crumble overnight, leaving only the echoes of what might have been. These are the injuries that didn't just sideline great players, they shattered entire empires. Some players fade with time, others retire in glory, their medals clinking in triumph. But Marco van Basten's story is different, a tale of genius cut cruelly short, a footballer who soared to the heavens but was struck down before he could fully embrace immortality. By the time Van Basten arrived at AC Milan in 1987, he was already a phenomenon, a striker sculpted with elegance, power, and an instinct that made goals look effortless. His rise was meteoric, a European Championship triumph with the Netherlands in 1988, back-to-back European Cups with Milan, and 3 Ballon d'Or wins before the age of 30. He wasn't just a player, he was an artist. And then came the pain. A persistent ankle injury, nagging since his early 20s, began to overshadow his brilliance. Yet, he played through the agony, dazzling Europe with moments of magic. His iconic volley in the Euro final, his 4-goal masterclass in the Champions League against IFK Göteborg, his part in Milan's 58-game unbeaten run. But every twist, every shot, every sprint came at a price. The final blow came in the 1993 Champions League final against Marseille. A brutal tackle from Basile Boli left him writhing on the pitch, and though he limped off in the 86th minute, football had already lost one of its greatest. He fought for 2 years, enduring surgeries, dreaming of a return. But fate is unforgiving. Milan, fearing for his health, denied him a last dance at the 1994 World Cup. And finally, in August 1995, at just 30 years old, Marco van Basten surrendered. "I died as a player," he later said. His words cut deeper than any statistic. Football was his life, and in an instant, it was gone. The same foot that once delivered poetry is now locked in place, a haunting reminder of what was lost. Fabio Capello, a man who coached countless greats, once declared, "He's the greatest striker I've ever coached." And yet, the world only got a glimpse of what he could have been. Would Milan have dominated the mid-90s with him leading the line? Would the Netherlands have conquered the world in 1994? We'll never know. But perhaps that's why his legend endures. Because in football, the stories that never got to be written are often the ones we remember most. After Basten was Inter Milan's Ronaldo's Nazarios, the dynasty that never was. Inter Milan had waited a decade to reclaim the Serie A throne. Since their last triumph in 1989, they had watched in agony as AC Milan and Juventus took turns ruling Italian football. But in 1997, salvation arrived in the form of Ronaldo Luis Nazario de Lima, a phenomenon unlike anything the world had ever seen. Blinding speed, razor-sharp dribbling, and a killer instinct that made defenders tremble at the mere sight of him. In his first season, he delivered on his promise, winning the Ballon d'Or and guiding Inter to a UEFA Cup victory in 1998. This was it. Inter's return to greatness was imminent. But football has a way of breaking hearts. On November 24th, 1999, in a routine league match against Lecce, Ronaldo fell to the ground, clutching his knee. The diagnosis was brutal, a torn patellar tendon. Months of painstaking recovery followed, each step bringing renewed hope that the king would return. And he did, on April 12, 2000, in the Coppa Italia final against Lazio. The world held its breath. Then, disaster. Just 6 minutes in, as he made a signature feint, his knee collapsed. No opponent had touched him. No foul had been committed. It was as if football itself had betrayed him. The sight of Ronaldo writhing in agony, tears streaming down his face, remains one of the sport's most harrowing images. For Inter Milan, it wasn't just the loss of a player. It was the collapse of a dream. They had built everything around him. believing he would be their answer to Milan's golden era. Instead, his absence left them vulnerable. While Inter struggled, their rivals tightened their grip. Juventus and AC Milan dominated Serie A, winning title after title, leaving Inter in their shadow. By the time Ronaldo returned in 2001, the magic was fading. He was still great, but not the unstoppable force he once was. In 2002, seeking a fresh start, he left for Real Madrid, and so Inter's dynasty never materialized. Had he stayed fit, would they have conquered Italy? Would they have ended the Juventus-Milan duopoly and carved their own era of dominance? These are the what-ifs that haunt Inter Milan fans to this day. In any case, football gave Ronaldo a second chance to win the FIFA World Cup 2002 with Brazil. But Eduardo, it gave him heartbreak and a one-way ticket to what could have been. February 23, 2008. A day Arsenal fans will never forget. The Gunners were 5 points clear at the top of the Premier League, playing some of the most electrifying football England had seen since the Invincibles. Their attack was built around Eduardo da Silva, a clinical, intelligent striker whose finishing gave them an extra edge. Arsenal's young squad was maturing into a title-winning force. Then, in a brutal instant, it all fell apart. Just 3 minutes into a match against Birmingham City, a reckless lunge from Martin Taylor sent Eduardo crashing to the ground. His leg snapped. The injury was so horrific, the television networks refused to show replays. Players turned away in horror. Cesc Fabregas and Alexander Hleb were in tears. Even referee Mike Dean looked shaken. Eduardo was stretchered off, his season over. So was Arsenal's title challenge. The psychological impact was immediate. That very game, Arsenal let a 2-1 lead slip in stoppage time, dropping 2 points. It was the first crack in their armor. 4 consecutive draws followed, the fluidity of their attack fading. By April, they faced Manchester United in a must-win clash at Old Trafford. They dominated for long stretches, but a late penalty against them crushed their spirit. United won 2-1. Arsenal, once 5 points clear, finished third, 4 points behind United, who went on to lift the trophy. Eduardo returned in 2009, but he was never the same. The explosive movement, the instinctive finishing, gone. Arsenal, too, had changed. Their golden opportunity had slipped away. A young, hungry squad, seemingly destined for greatness, never recovered. From North London to Merseyside, the football gods seemed to have a cruel sense of humor. If Eduardo's career was shattered in an instant at Arsenal, Michael Owen's decline was a slow, painful unraveling at Liverpool, one hamstring tear at a time. In the late 90s, as Liverpool sought a return to their former glory, one player emerged as their great hope, Michael Owen. A teenage sensation with blistering pace and an ice-cold finishing touch, Owen was the prodigy who could lead the Reds back to the top. At just 18, he claimed the Premier League Golden Boot in 1997-98 and repeated the feat the following season. Then came his crowning moment, the 2001 FA Cup final. With Liverpool trailing Arsenal, Owen single-handedly turned the game on its head, scoring twice late on to secure the trophy. That year, he propelled the Reds to a historic treble, FA Cup, League Cup, UEFA Cup, and became the first English player in decades to win the Ballon d'Or. He was Liverpool's answer to Manchester United's dominance, their guiding star toward the long-coveted Premier League title. But fate had other plans. You see, Owen's greatest weapon was his speed, but it also became his Achilles heel. In 1999, he suffered his first major hamstring injury at Elland Road, and from then on, his career became a battle against his own body. Every sprint felt like a gamble, every burst of acceleration a risk. By 2002-2003, the fearless, explosive striker was fading. The sharpness was still there, but the devastating pace that had terrorized defenders was slipping away. Then, in 2004, he left for Real Madrid, with Liverpool still searching for a league title. Had injuries not betrayed him, Owen could have been to Liverpool what Thierry Henry was to Arsenal, the heartbeat of a golden era. Instead, his decline mirrored Liverpool's prolonged wait for a league crown, a dynasty that never materialized. Well, Owen's body betrayed him, and Liverpool's dreams faded with it. But if injuries stole a dynasty from Owen, they shattered an entire nation's hope for Neymar. In 2014, Neymar was the chosen one. The Golden Boy tasked with delivering Brazil its long-awaited World Cup triumph on home soil. He had carried a flawed Brazilian squad to the quarter-finals, scoring 4 goals and igniting the hopes of a nation desperate for redemption. Then, in the dying minutes of the quarter-final against Colombia, disaster struck. As Neymar shielded the ball, Juan Camilo Zúñiga's knee crashed into his lower back. He collapsed in agony, rushed to the hospital, where doctors revealed a fractured vertebra, just 2 centimeters away from paralysis. With their talisman sidelined, Brazil's World Cup dream unraveled in the most nightmarish fashion. The 7-1 humiliation against Germany in the semi-final remains one of the darkest days in football history. Neymar, helpless, watched the disaster unfold from a wheelchair, a haunting image forever etched in memory. Had he been fit, could Brazil have stopped the collapse? Could they have lifted the trophy? The questions will never have answers. But one thing is certain, Brazil's dynasty crumbled before it could even begin. 3 years later, Neymar made a world record £222 million move to PSG. The mission was clear: dominate Europe, break the Champions League curse, and cement PSG among football's elite. But his time in Paris became a cycle of brilliance, heartbreak, and untimely injuries. In 2018, months before the World Cup, he fractured his metatarsal. He rushed back for the tournament, but Brazil faltered in the quarter-finals. The story repeated in 2019, then in 2021, and again in 2022. His ultimate chance to justify the record transfer came in 2020 when PSG reached the Champions League final. But against Bayern Munich, Neymar was ineffective, missing key chances as PSG lost 1-0. The dream had slipped away. By the time he departed for Al Hilal in 2023, PSG's Champions League aspirations remained unfulfilled. The Neymar-Mbappé-Messi era, a project designed for dominance, ended as one of football's greatest what-ifs. These injuries didn't just sideline legends, they altered history. They robbed us of dynasties, turned champions into nearly men, and left fans forever haunted by the question, what if? Would Milan have ruled the 90s with a fit Van Basten? Would Inter have dominated Italy with a fully healthy Ronaldo? Would Arsenal have ended their title drought years earlier if Eduardo's leg had never shattered? We'll never know, but that's the cruel beauty of football. The greatest stories aren't always the ones we witness. Sometimes they're the ones we never got to see.